be speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. Today we commence a very interesting two-part series on the Foreign Exchange Management Act and specifically Section 37. So today we will discuss part one. We all know that a lot of businesses and businessmen want to know about, in a sense, the implications of being prosecuted under FEMA. What are the intricacies? And we have somebody who's an expert in these issues. I want to welcome Karnail Singh. Is managing partner of law firm Circle of Counsels, also advises a lot of clients on FEMA issues regularly. So he would be able to tell us best on what we should know about FEMA. Good to see you, sir, and looking forward to some interesting insights on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
See, all the businessmen or general counsels, people like those who are watching you today, would first of all want to know the background of FEMA, because for them, obviously, they come from a point of, in a sense, wanting to know about what it is all about. And then we move to the specifics. So if you could give me a background of the FEMA.
See, for the background of FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act, yes. We go back to the period before independence.
Okay.
See, during the wartime, that is Second World War, there were huge expenditure and a lot of corruption was there. That led to formation of Delhi Police Establishment Act, which is a precursor of CBI basically. Simultaneously, when India got independence, the foreign exchange reserve was very less, was a minimal. Today, if we can say we have come to the situation where 335 times the foreign exchange what we had got at the time of independence. So the government immediately after independence wanted to conserve the foreign exchange. That was number one. Number two, the government also wanted that there should not be a capital flight from the country. The capital flight could be taken because of two reasons. One is the people have the corruption money. They would take abroad. The second reason was during the initial years, or I would say even 30, 40 years after independence, the income tax rates were very high. If we take 70, for example, 1970, income tax rates at that time were at the highest slab rate were 97.75%.
97.75%.
Yes. And therefore, the people who take away the money outside, they have temptation to take money outside. Then slowly it was reduced from 97.75 to 77%. And today, if we talk to the individual, it is around 40%. So the income tax rates have slowly come down. But at that time, they were very high. And therefore, more temptation for the people to take it outside. So second purpose was to stop the capital flight. So if we combine these two, then the law was made right in the 1947 Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. It was a criminal offence, and very stringently it was made applicable. Then in 1973, certain changes were made, and the basically 47 FERA was repeated. 1973 Foreign Exchange Regulation Act was enacted. But thereafter, in 90s, we started opening our economy. There were economic reforms starting from 91. And there were certain allegations about the implementation of FERA also.
Allegations about it?
Misuse of FERA by the Enforcement Directorate officers.
Okay.
The government thought over it, analyzed it, and they say that now this is a stage where we have come. We need to not regulate, we need to manage the foreign exchange. So FERA was repealed. And in 1999, Foreign Exchange Management Act was introduced. It is basically the civil offense at that time. So from the FERA as a criminal offense to the FEMA as a civil offense was introduced. And here the question comes of management. How to manage our foreign exchange. So basically they define who is a resident in India, who is not a resident in India. two categories, or NRI, or the person of Indian origin. Various categories were made. On that basis, it was decided whether the person can take money outside, or person may not take money outside of the country or bring from to the inside. So there were current account transactions and there were capital account transactions. So it was decided for the current account transactions, everything is permitted except when it is prohibited. So for current account transactions, there has to be a specific prohibition by the government or the directions issued by the Reserve Bank of India, because the Reserve Bank of India monitors the foreign exchange transactions. On the contrary, the capital account transactions were those where it is prohibited unless specifically permitted. So very clear-cut demarcations has been made in this. So two routes were made. One route was the automatic route, and one route was approval route. Approval from the government or from the RBI. An automatic route they define in under what conditions it can be taken from the automatic route, where you don't require anybody's permission. You may inform the RBI, but it is not a permission, was not required. Thirdly, when we talk of the FDI or ODI or portfolio investment, basically the Act also decides or defines basically in which industries what amount of equity could be of the foreign country, what amount should not be. So for different industries, different criteria is there. In some industries, it could be 75% FDI is allowed. In some, it is 50% allowed, depending upon the importance of that industry. So that is basically the FEMA. Any transactions apart from that, the property, for example, foreign exchange, the property in the foreign country, how that can be transacted between two countries. That is also defined under Foreign Exchange Management Act. And Enforcement Directorate is the only agency which deals with any offences under FEMA. The punishment under FEMA, it is a civil, it is a fine at that time. So the maximum fine is 3 times of the offence done. Suppose somebody has done the offence of 100 crores. Then the fine could be up to the 300 crore. And adjudication is done, first adjudication is done by the officers of the Enforcement Directorate. But if it is decided by at a higher level, maybe the director of enforcement or additional special directorate of enforcement or additional director of enforcement, then the appeal goes to the tribunal. If it is decided by the lower officers, joint director and below, then appeal goes to the special director appeal, which is generally from the income tax. So that is the basic framework of Foreign Exchange Management Act and its history.
A lot of business people who routinely transact would want to know about the issue that it is generally said that FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act, is a civil offense. Could you explain whether it is indeed so?
See, if we take before 2015, precisely September 2015, all violations under Foreign Exchange Management Act were of civil nature. That means only penalty would be there. Now in 2015, 2 sections were introduced under FEMA. One is 37A. And 37A says about that if there is any property or foreign exchange kept by a person outside the country, a person who is resident in India and is keeping outside the country, in violation of the Section 4 of the Foreign Exchange Management Act. So Section 4 of Foreign Exchange Management Act prescribes what type of foreign exchange, under what conditions can be kept outside the country, in what circumstances foreign security can be kept outside the country, or the immovable property kept outside the country by a person who is resident in India. If somebody violates that Section 4 of the FEMA, then this property, which is outside the country, equivalent value can be attached within the country. For example, there were Panama Papers cases, where what people had done is they have taken money outside under LRS scheme.
Which is the LRS is the liberalized remittance scheme.
Yes.
And to explain what is the limit to which people can send money outside in that?
Today it is $2.5 lakh.
$2.5 lakh. Okay.
Yes. Today.
As
it was $3 lakh also.
Okay.
So if somebody is keeping that money outside, or that foreign exchange or the foreign security or immovable property, then the equivalent value can be attached in the country. So I was talking about the Panama Papers. In the Panama Papers, what many people had done, they had taken money in the LRS scheme outside the country. And then they invested, like they started a new company, which was not allowed at that time, that you take a foreign exchange in LRS and start a new company. And they opened these accounts in a tax havens, these companies in the tax havens. So in Panama Papers, it came to the notice of the Enforcement Directorate. The notices were issued, and the properties of some people which were kept abroad, equivalent value were attached in the country. So this section was introduced for that purpose, Section 37A. But
37A.
37A of FEMA.
37A of FEMA. Okay.
Yeah. Then there is another section, Section 13(1)A.
So first is Section 37A and then 13(1)A.
13(1)A. So 13(1)A also prescribes the penalty. What could be the penalty in this case? So in this case, if somebody during the adjudication process has been found to be guilty of violation of Section 4 under Section 37A when adjudication is done, then the Enforcement Directorate can decide that they want to prosecute the person.
Okay.
Now, if they prosecute the person, then the punishment prescribed is, which may extend to the 5 years and with fine.
So this is a criminal offense.
So it becomes a criminal offense. So in a case, if the person is keeping foreign exchange or foreign assets or immovable property, a resident of India is keeping abroad that property in violation of Section 4 of FEMA, and after adjudication, because during adjudication, Enforcement Directorate can attach and also do the fine 3 times of the violation. But in addition to that, Enforcement Directorate can send the case for prosecution before the court. And in that case, there's a prescribed punishment under Section 13(1)A, which may extend to 5 years or with fine also. So here we can say that it is a criminal offense in that sense.
So FEMA has become a criminal offense. Now, for the benefit of the viewers, if you could explain with an example about a certain offense, it can be real or false, doesn't matter. It's just about explaining with an example.
See, the example, for example, I was giving about Panama Papers. You can take any other example. A person who is resident in India, importance is this violation is against the person who is resident in India.
Resident and citizen mean the same?
No, they do not mean the same.
Okay.
See, for the resident in India, the person has to be there for more than 182 days in India.
Okay.
In a year.
Okay.
So he is not for 182 days in India, then he's not a resident in India.
Okay.
So the first question is whether and this definition of resident in India, I'm telling under FEMA. Income tax, there is a slightly different definition of the resident in India. So if the person is resident in India and he has taken either money abroad or he he has undisclosed property abroad, which is in violation of Section 4. So suppose what he has done is he has taken money through Hawala. Let's give me another example. And he purchases a property abroad. Now this property which is purchased abroad is in violation of Section 4 because it has not been taken through the proper route, proper approval, either automatic route or non-automatic routes. In that case, he has violated. And therefore, Section 37A Enforcement Directorate can give the notice to him, can investigate, can adjudicate, and after adjudication under Section 13(1)A, ED can file a prosecution complaint in the court.
And tell me one thing, as of today, compliance is there, or there are a lot of violations of FEMA? In your view, are there a lot of violations, a lot of cases being booked, or do you think it's a thing of the past?
No, there are a number of cases are booked under Foreign Exchange Management Act.
And does it happen due to ignorance, or it is 100% malafide intention? People knowingly violate.
See, sometimes due to ignorance, sometimes due to wrong advice.
So when you said wrong advice, I want to ask, there are many startups in the country which are started by young companies in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Bombay, even in Gurgaon. Many times we see a lot of these startups due to ignorance. How much of it is ignorance? Can you explain? Because many times, you see a lot of cases being booked and then they admit that they were actually not knowing. If you could explain it for the new business, please. Young boys, when they start businesses after taking a funding, these things do happen.
See, mostly what the youngsters or anyone else does is he goes to some advisor who may not be well versed under Foreign Exchange Management Act. And without going through all provisions of the Act. And the second thing is under FEMA, a lot of changes takes place. So what are the provisions on FEMA in 2009 may not be the same in 2012. So if one has to give advice, one has to go through all these provisions and see about what time we are talking. Fortunately, today, the Reserve Bank of India has started issuing consolidated digests on every issue. So for every issue. So it becomes easier for people to find everything at one place. Previously, it was not everything at one place. And therefore, it was a problem for the people. And what I suggest is anybody the people who are these youngsters, who are starting the new companies, getting the FDI from abroad, they can go to the experts, whoever they think experts, but they can also study the arguments going through the RBI issued directions. One can go through the RBI issued directions, one can see whether advice is proper or not.
Okay. As far as convictions go, do you see a large number of convictions happening under this act also?
See, till now, I would say no.
Okay.
Because in most of the cases where the people have been investigated in this case, they bring the property from abroad.
They bring it back.
They bring the property back from the abroad.
And when you said the attachment is up to 3 times.
The punishment, the fine is up to 3 times.
Not the attachment.
Not the attachment.
So you mean if you take 4 crores abroad, then you will have to pay 12 crores in India?
Yeah, it can be till 12 crores.
So is it up to, or 12 is...
Property equivalent to 4 crore will be attached in India.
Okay.
But when the adjudication is done, then the fine could be up to the 12 crore.
It is up to, which means it's not fixed that it can be...
it can be less or it can be, but the maximum fine would be the 3 times of the offence done.
Now, one for people rightly or wrongly accused of FEMA, one guidance that you would like to give, that, okay, a case has happened and you feel you're innocent because you did not have knowledge. What is the best way?
See, best way to explain your side. See, ignorance of law is no excuse, basically.
Is no excuse, even if you're a new company?
Yes. So that excuse will not be there. But see, if you are innocent, actually, in this, that can reduce the amount of fine.
Okay. But you mean if you're genuinely able to substantiate?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen these cases happening that if there are genuine inadvertent mistakes, the law is not applied as harshly?
Yes. There are many cases in which adjudicating authority, they come to the conclusion after understanding the whole case that it was a genuine mistake. For example, some of the universities purchase the foreign equipments for their labs. They do not know the procedure. And sometimes they come under FEMA. So they have, it is innocent violations.
Yes.
So in that case, the punishment would be very, very less.
Okay.
Would be very, very less in that case.
Fine. One last question. Do you advise people to keep an advisor when they do any such transactions? I mean, it will save a lot of hassle later.
See, absolutely. This foreign exchange management law itself, it's changing. It is sometimes difficult to understand the implications and repercussions. Therefore, it is always better to take advice and then engage into any foreign exchange transactions, or even, I would say, even when you are making the agreement relating to bringing FDI or sending ODI abroad, get it vetted through somebody who is expert in FEMA. So that tomorrow when you go to the courts or something, you find your agreement is in violation of the law itself.
So one last question in 30 seconds before we sign off. If some company has raised loans in Europe, UAE or any other place, and it is bringing that money to India, even in those cases, you think they should take an advisor because interest rates abroad are low. And that's why companies resort to raising loans abroad. Do you think companies would save a lot of hassle by just having the right advisors?
Yes, absolutely. They should take advice. And any transaction across the border should be taken proper advice, because then ultimately an unnecessary person gets entangled into legal battles subsequently.
Very well point. So we had the managing partner, Mr. Colonel Singh, explaining to us in very simple language. He started from before 1947. We came to 2023. He explained to all of you also about how even innocently companies get into trouble, but there is hope. And he said that it's always right to keep an advisor instead of falling foul of law, because he also said that ignorance of law is no excuse. In part 2, we will request for his time to asking about specific some cases with highlights. And of course, we've discussed Section 37. We'll also discuss other aspects of this law. But I think we are almost out of time. So that's it for now. I would like to thank Mr. Colonel Singh for his time. And thank you so much for explaining it in such a story, like an easy manner for every businessman to understand, or every person who will go through these kind of cases. It could be an employee of a company. They also deal with these issues. I think it was useful to all of us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.